As the shock and awe of the Trump presidential win wanes, it's prompting reflection on what his victory will mean to the world and this region, given some of the billionaire's rhetoric.
And you always have to be prepared to walk. And if we say to Japan, we need help, you have to help us because we can't continue to lose a fortune defending you, you have to be prepared to walk.
Malcolm Turnbull flies to Peru tonight to attend the APEC leaders meeting. The event will be dominated by talk of Donald Trump, who won't be there.
Look, everyone will be talking about it, there's no doubt about that.
The Prime Minister was one of the first world leaders to speak with Mr Trump after his win, thanks to the Shark, golfer Greg Norman. He's close friends with Mr Trump and played diplomatic caddy in passing on his number to Mr Turnbull's office.
One of our greatest assets, you know, is the more than 1 million Australians who live overseas. And Greg is one of them. Millions of people who are committed to strong ties. And Greg is one of those, and he's a great Australian and very committed to a very strong relationship. He wants Australia to succeed, America to succeed, and if we both succeed, it'll be good for the world too.
Prime Minister, why didn't your office have Mr Trump's number before the election?
Well, I'm not going, you know, in diplomacy and politics you use lots of networks, and all I can say is we have great networks, great connections, and Greg Norman is a great Australian.
Well, look, I'm pleased that the Prime Minister has spoken to the President-elect. You know, it is an important relationship for us, the relationship between Australia and the United States, and we'll continue to do our very best to make sure that that relationship is a strong one.
Labor has indicated Mr Trump's election marks a change point in what could be a very different America. Former Prime Minister Paul Keating told 7:30 last week it was a time for a more independent stance.
We've had more or less a tag-along foreign policy, tag-along the United States. It's time to cut the tag.
The Shadow Foreign Minister Penny Wong says Labor will consider its foreign policy over the coming months and how best to effect any changes within the alliance framework.
I think Penny Wong's comments were a little ill-considered because this is not a referendum on whether we like the president. Our alliance interests run deeper than that. They'll survive this president and probably the next 4 or 5 presidents after him. And therefore, because he says some things people don't like, really doesn't mean that we can now say we're going to up sticks and reconsider our position. Just imagine if the Americans said that about us, we'd be in an absolute panic if we were getting similar comments from senior American politicians.
At a summit of world leaders, Kevin Rudd famously saluted President George W. Bush, but other past Labor leaders haven't been so admiring.
Bush himself is the most incompetent and dangerous president in living memory.
In the spirit of bipartisanship, the red carpet's been rolled out in Canberra for past presidents.
In one another, I really believe we see a distant mirror of our better selves, reflections of liberty and decency, of openness and vitality.
We see something familiar here, something we like. Australians are fair-minded and tolerant and easygoing.
In the Asia-Pacific in the 21st century, the United States of America is all in.
Under President Trump, former Deputy Defence Chief and now head of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, Peter Jennings, believes Australia will be asked to do more.
I think we could expect an early phone call to say, when Australia will you undertake a freedom of navigation operation through the South China Sea? For over a year now we've been saying that this is a vital Australian national security interest, and yet we've declined to send a ship through the region. I think largely because we were getting away with that and the Obama administration was distracted.
Should we be prompted by an ally to do that?
No, we should frankly have the gumption to do it ourselves because it is in more of Australia's strategic interest than it is the US, given the volume of our trade which crosses that region. And the fact that we've kind of fudged this issue over the last 12 to 18 months, I think really isn't good enough.
The US-Australian alliance is a bedrock of foreign policy, and my Labor team share that view. But it's not the only pillar of Australian foreign policy. We do need to reach out and engage more deeply in the region, and both sides of Australian politics have pursued exactly that strategy.
You have Penny Wong going in one direction, wanting to move away from our strongest, most important, most trusted, most enduring ally, wanting to move away, put our nation's security at risk, and then on the other hand, you have the right of the party trying to crab walk back from where she's gone. Labor is hopelessly divided on national security. They're hopelessly divided on border protection.
Yet that seems to be different to the view Malcolm Turnbull prosecuted 5 years ago, after Barack Obama and Julia Gillard announced the rotational presence of US Marines in Darwin in 2011. Mr Turnbull said Australia should be adopting a more independent position, warning against a doe-eyed fascination with the leader of the free world.
When President Obama made his big pivot speech here in Parliament House, it was Malcolm Turnbull, more than anyone on the Labor side, more than anyone else on the coalition side, who said, wait a minute, we can't base our foreign policy on a dewy-eyed fascination with the leader of the free world. So for him now to come out and criticise Penny Wong for making these, I think, quite sophisticated and balanced comments about our predicament is, to put it mildly, a bit hypocritical.
While defence analysts predict the alliance will endure well into the future, the stability of the next American administration is far from certain.
Back before last Tuesday, when everyone thought a Trump presidency was impossible, everyone said, he would be a disaster if he won the election, and therefore we assume he won't. Now that he's won it, too many people around this town are anxiously trying to convince themselves and convince the rest of us that actually he's just fine. He's not just fine. He's a very flawed person. There are real doubts still about whether or not he's fit to hold the office he's been elected to, and 290 Electoral College votes don't change that.